All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive. This time we're tackling Brené Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection.
Oh yeah, this one's a classic.
I mean, you might already know Brown from like all her work on vulnerability, but this book, it kind of takes things a step further, like it's a practical guide to what she calls wholehearted living,
hmm
which I know kind of sounds a little, I don't know.
I love Fluffy.
Yeah, a little fluffy at first glance,
Yeah.
but trust me, stick with us.
Yeah.
Because it's actually like rooted in some serious research, like really compelling stuff.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's so cool about this book is that Brown isn't just saying, like, think positive and just ignore all your flaws.
Right.
She actually digs into the science, like why chasing perfection can actually backfire
Hmm.
and how it can actually leave you feeling like more ashamed and disconnected. And she makes this really, really strong case for how vulnerability, like being willing to let yourself be seen, warts and all, that's actually the key to having more courage, to connecting with people, and to ultimately living a more fulfilling life.
So we're not talking about like just some vague self-help platitudes here. This is like a research-backed approach to self-acceptance. And we're going to unpack some pretty powerful ideas today, like how vulnerability can be a strength
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
and how perfectionism, it's not the same thing as striving for excellence. There's a difference there.
Right, exactly. In Brown, she lays out these 10 guideposts for wholehearted living, which some of them are pretty surprising, honestly.
Yeah, I know. I was like, play and rest as paths to personal growth. Sign me up.
Right. But there's like a real depth to why those things matter, and that's what we're going to get into.
So are you ready to kind of unravel the power of imperfection with us?
Let's do it.
All right, let's start with this whole idea of vulnerability as strength. It's like so central to Brown's work. But it can feel really counterintuitive, right? Because we're so conditioned to think that being vulnerable means you're weak.
Oh, absolutely. Like from the time we're little, we're taught to like hide our flaws.
Put on that brave face.
Right. Put on a brave face, never let them see you sweat.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, all that. But Brown's research actually shows that vulnerability, that's where our real strength lies. It takes a ton of courage to be open, to be authentic,
Mhm.
and to really let people see your imperfections. And that act of courage, that's what lets us create deeper connections and really experience true belonging.
There's this really compelling example in the book. Brown talks about how she used to, try to present this perfect image of herself.
Oh, yeah.
Professionally, personally, everything was polished. But it actually kept people at a distance. It wasn't until she started like sharing her struggles, her doubts, that people really connected with her like on a human level.
And that's where the magic happens, right?
Hmm.
When we let ourselves be vulnerable, it creates this space for other people to do the same. And it shows them, like, hey, it's okay to not be perfect. And that's how we build trust. That's how we build intimacy in our relationships.
Okay, so got to push back a little here. Like, I totally see the value in being vulnerable, but isn't there a risk of like oversharing
hmm
or even being taken advantage of? Where's the line?
That's a great question. And Brown, she actually addresses that directly in the book. She says that vulnerability isn't about just like spilling your guts to everyone you meet. It's
Why?
about being discerning,
Yeah.
choosing who to trust, and realizing that not everyone deserves that level of openness from you.
So it's being intentional with our vulnerability,
Yeah, you'd say.
making sure we're sharing with people who've earned our trust.
Right. And it's about learning to set boundaries, which is actually another one of her guideposts, by the way. But what's so powerful is she backs all this up with like solid research.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, like there are studies that show that people who are more comfortable expressing vulnerability, they actually end up having stronger relationships, they're more resilient, and they have higher self-esteem.
Wow, so it's not just like, touchy-feely stuff. There's
Uh-huh.
actual science behind it. This makes me think about like my own life. Have you ever noticed how when you try to appear perfect, it actually makes you feel more isolated? Like when you pretend everything's fine, but inside you're like struggling.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all been there. And that actually brings us to the second key takeaway from the book, the difference between perfectionism and self-worth.
Ooh, yeah. Because this book really digs into how those two things, they're not the same at all.
Not even close. Brown's argument is that perfectionism is fueled by fear.
Mm.
Fear of judgment, fear of failure, the fear of not being good enough. It's about trying to control how other people see you.
Hmm.
And it can be so exhausting.
It really can.
Self-worth, on the other hand, that comes from within. It's about accepting yourself, flaws and all, and knowing that your value doesn't depend on what other people think.
That's so powerful. So one's driven by fear, the other is about self-acceptance. It makes you wonder, though, could striving for excellence, like that drive to be our best, could that actually be different from perfectionism?
That's such a good question. And I think the key difference really lies in the motivation. Like, are you striving for excellence because you genuinely want to grow and learn?
Hmm.
Or are you doing it to prove something to yourself or to other people?
Yeah, I'm starting to see that. It's about the why. Like, if I'm pushing myself out of fear of what other people will think, that's probably perfectionism.
Probably.
But if I'm doing it because I'm genuinely passionate about something and I want to challenge myself, that feels healthier?
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that mistakes are inevitable. And that's okay. It's about learning from those setbacks and using them as opportunities to grow.
So it's about progress, not perfection,
Right,
right?
right.
And that leads us perfectly to those 10 intriguing guideposts for wholehearted living. Let's dive into those next.
All right, so these 10 guideposts, they're like this roadmap to cultivating the qualities that lead to wholehearted living. And I mean, we could literally spend a whole deep dive on each one. But today, we want to highlight a couple that might seem kind of surprising at first. Play and rest.
Yeah, those aren't exactly like the first things you think of when you're talking about personal growth and resilience.
Right.
But I am so curious about this. Like, what's so profound about playing and resting?
Well, think about it. In our culture, it's like go, 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 achieve, achieve, achieve. These are often the first things that we let go of, right?
Hmm.
We feel guilty for taking breaks. We feel bad for not being productive every second of the day. But Brown, she makes this really compelling case for why play and rest are actually essential for our well-being, mentally, physically, the whole package.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this ties into like the whole letting go of perfectionism thing. Like maybe we need to stop viewing rest as unproductive and start seeing it as like essential, for recharging, for showing up as our best selves.
Exactly. And play is just as important. Brown argues that it helps us tap into our creativity, that sense of wonder or joy. When we play, we let go of being self-conscious. We connect with that inner child. Think about it. When was the last time you truly let loose and just had fun? Just for the fun of it. No agenda.
Oh, you know what? Speaking of play, I recently tried this aerial yoga class. Have you heard of these? Where you're like hanging from silks, doing yoga poses.
Oh,
I was
wow.
terrible at it, but I laughed so hard, I cried. It was such a good reminder to not take myself so seriously.
That's a perfect example. It's about embracing that lightness, letting go of that need to be good at everything. And when we allow ourselves to play, we actually become more resilient, more adaptable, and more creative in other areas of our lives.
It's funny because we tend to think of play as something frivolous, something for kids.
Hmm.
But maybe it's actually a key ingredient to a more fulfilling, more meaningful life, no matter how old you are.
Absolutely. And rest is just as vital. And it's not just about sleep, although obviously sleep is super crucial. It's about creating space for stillness, for reflection, for just being. In our world, we're constantly connected, bombarded with information, stimulation. It's so easy to get caught up in doing, doing, doing.
Mm.
But true rest, that allows us to reconnect with ourselves, to listen to that inner wisdom, and to recharge so we can show up more fully in the world.
It makes you wonder, what would happen if we all prioritize play and rest as much as we prioritize work and productivity? Maybe we'd be less stressed, more creative, and more connected to ourselves and other people. I know I personally feel my best when I'm making time for both.
And that's what Brown is getting at with this idea of wholehearted living. It's not about striving for this unattainable ideal of perfection. It's about embracing those imperfections, taking care of yourself, and cultivating practices that nourish your mind, body, and spirit.
So play and rest, they're not just about indulgence.
Hmm.
They're essential parts of a balanced and fulfilling life. It's almost like a radical act of self-care in a culture that's constantly telling us we need to be doing more.
Exactly. It's about giving yourself permission to slow down, to recharge, to simply be, which, I mean, that can be a real challenge in a world that values busyness and productivity above all else.
Now, I know we have 8 other guideposts in the book, and each one offers these really profound insights for living a more wholehearted life.
Yeah.
We definitely encourage you to check out the book, dive deeper. But for now, we want to leave you with this. What if you chose one of these guideposts, maybe play or rest, and really focused on cultivating that this week?
Yeah. Pay attention to how it feels to prioritize those things. What shifts do you notice in your mood, your energy levels, your relationships? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.
Okay, so we've talked about the power of vulnerability, the difference between perfectionism and self-worth, and these two seemingly simple but profound guideposts, play and rest.
But Brown doesn't stop there. This book tackles some really big questions like how do we let go of the need for approval? How do we live more authentically?
Yeah, that's what we're going to explore next. How can we stop seeking validation from others and start living from a place of true self-acceptance?
Okay, so we've been talking about vulnerability and perfectionism and, the importance of play and rest. But there's another big idea in the gifts of imperfection that we really need to unpack, and that's this whole concept of letting go of the need for approval. Like, how do we do that?
It's huge, right? Brown, she argues that needing validation from other people all the time can really keep us from living authentically and embracing who we truly are. It's like we're always trying to fit into this mold that society has created instead of just honoring our own, like, unique quirks and imperfections. Totally. Like, think about how much time and energy we waste on trying to please everyone, worrying about what people will think, and just, second guessing ourselves constantly. It's exhausting.
And it can lead to some not so great patterns like people pleasing, having low self esteem. And it can even contribute to anxiety and depression because when we tie our worth to what other people think, we're basically at the mercy of their opinions. It's rough.
It's like we're giving away our power, letting other people dictate how we feel about ourselves. So how do we break free from that need for approval? Is it even possible?
It's definitely a journey, not like a switch we can just flip on and off. But Brown, she gives some really practical advice in the book. Like she talks about cultivating self-compassion,
Hmm.
which is basically treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a good friend. It's recognizing that we're all imperfect and that's okay.
It's like quieting that inner critic that's always saying we're not good enough, smart enough, or whatever enough.
Right. And it's about setting boundaries, learning to say no to the things that just drain your energy or don't match up with your values, and prioritizing your own needs and desires, even if they don't fit in with what everyone else expects from you.
I could see how that would be so challenging, though, especially when we're, like, surrounded by messages telling us we need to be a certain way to be loved and accepted.
It is. But here's the thing. When we stop trying to get everyone else's approval, we actually often find that we attract people who appreciate us for who we actually are. Because
Yeah.
we're not trying to be someone we're not. We're just showing up authentically, and that is magnetic.
It's like we're finally free to be ourselves without all the masks and the pretending. And that freedom helps us build deeper, more meaningful connections.
Exactly. And it frees up so much energy that we can then use for the things that really matter to us, our passions, our purpose, our relationships. It's really freeing.
This whole conversation is making me think about that quote by Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Maybe letting go of needing approval is about stepping into that power, owning our worthiness and showing up in the world as our full, authentic selves.
Beautifully said. And Brown emphasizes that letting go of that need for approval is an ongoing practice. It's not like you reach this perfect state of self-acceptance and you're done. It's about continually making the choice to honor your own truth, even when it's scary or uncomfortable.
So we've covered some pretty powerful ideas from Brené Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection. We talked about the power of vulnerability, what makes perfectionism different from self-worth, the importance of play and rest, and like the transformative potential of letting go of needing everyone to approve of us. But like always, the real work begins when we take these ideas and we apply them to our own lives.
What resonated most with you from this deep dive? What are you going to try this week? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you.
And tell us, what book should we deep dive into next?
We're always looking for new titles to explore with our awesome community of deep divers.
Until next time, keep diving deep, embrace your perfectly imperfect selves, and remember, you are enough just as you are.